Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Introduce us from the group of five want to present the result of our group. My name Kurniagung Wicaksono.
Then my name Leo Ananda.
My name is Muhammad Fitrani Akbar.
The ignition system is a mechatronic circuit used to transmit high voltage electric energy with a low voltage input to the spark plug to be converted into spark. The principal use in the ignition system is to change in energy from electrical energy to spark. Basically, electrical energy is converted into heat energy, but because the potential difference between the two poles is large enough, there will be an electron jump. How do you make a big potential difference? This is the task of the step-up transformer. The step-up transformer is two electrical coils that have more secondary turns than the primary winding. So that if an electric current is supplied to the primary coil, the electric current in the secondary coil has a higher voltage. To get a higher secondary voltage, the difference in the number of primary and secondary turns is made large. Ignition system function. The function of the ignition system is only one, namely burning the mixture of air and gasoline that has been compressed. At the end of the compression stroke, only on a gasoline engine. Why only on gasoline engines? This is because the diesel engine that turns on diesel use automatic combustion, known as self-combustion. So it does not require an ignition system circuit. This is a picture of gasoline engine combustion process. In the four-stroke gasoline engine cycle, we recognize the intake stroke, compression stroke, work stroke, and exhaust stroke. Spark plugs will only ignite when the mixture of gasoline and compressed air. This occurs at the end of the compression stroke when the piston reaches TDC top dead center. Thus, it can be concluded that the ignition system does not work constantly, but it intervals. This is a picture of types of ignition system. Apparently, there are several kinds of ignition system, among other. One, conventional ignition. As the name implies, conventional ignition is a system that works conventionally using mechanical contacts to determine the interval the spark plug ignites. Two, transistor ignition. This system is also said to be electronic ignition because it uses transistor as a subtitle for mechanical contact. The definition of a transistor ignition system is a mechanism for changing electricity into a fire with the help of a transistor which acts as an electric switch that decides the primary current of the coil. However, in general, the transistor ignition scheme is almost the same as conventional ignition. Number three, PLI ignition. This ignition system does not use a distributor, which is a component or tool used to distribute the high voltage current coming from the coil. Almost all EFI cars use the DLI ignition system. Number 4, CDI ignition. CDI ignition system is a system used on turbines, namely a single-cylinder engine. This machine is a capacitor for an induction generator source on coil. As basic knowledge, here will describe how one of the four systems above work. This is a picture of oh, next.
How conventional car ignition system works. The system starts when the ignition in the on position or turns on. The current that follows the ignition coil, in which there are two types of coils, namely primary and secondary. The same input to the two coils cause them to also get in the electric current. However, to the outputs of the two coils differ greatly. Current, the electric current that flows in the conventional car ignition system circuit is only in a standby state. There is no change in the voltage that occurs in the coil because there is not movement in the circuit breaker. The spark plug will not turn on if the flywheel is not rotating. Furthermore, the flywheel will rotate caused by starter system and the ignition system will start working. The circuit breaker is of conventional ignition system makes the circuit unfilled with the distributor circuit and has a shaft component in the connected to the engine crankshaft. That the way, the engine rotates followed by components that will also rotate according the engine RPM. Conventional ignition system components consist of the battery ignition key, fuse, relay, ignition coil, platinum can, capacitor, distributor, high voltage cable, spark plug, centrifugal advancer, and vacuum advancer. Previously, there are current flow in the primary coil which caused a magnetic field in the primary coil. When the primary current is suddenly cut off, the magnets in the primary coil will turn off. Due to its twice state, the magnetic field will move simultaneously inward before dissipating. Inside the primary coil, here is a secondary coil with a number of turn up to 10 times greater. Finally, the magnetic field hits the secondary coil, so that the voltage in the secondary coil increases dramatically. This voltage is instantaneous because it occurs when there is a movement of magnetic field from the primary current, which also instantaneous. For this reason, to support the ignition process continually, platinum must be able to cut off the connected primary current with the right timing. High voltage electrical energy from the secondary coil is channeled to the spark plugs through the distributor components. The distributor will supply the electrical each spark plug with the connector timing and FO. The conventional ignition system is also referred to the platinum ignition system because the way platinum works in conventional ignition system is very important. Core ignition system components and their function. First, a battery. The, the first component is a car ignition system is a battery. The battery is the first source of energy and internal combustion car. And of course, an electric car. Battery that are used where are dry are batteries with a standard voltage of 12 voltage. The ignition system requires a single battery because the first ignition will occur using battery power. If the battery is more or just a notch for the standard starter system, and the ignition system will the otherwise work. Important things about the battery you must pay attention to avoid the car not turning on at the time of starting. In the fact, a battery with a good charging system will be easy to always live in after a good startup. This is because the charging system will supply or rechange the battery after use. Second, ignition key. The ignition key for the new cars replace the many advanced technologies, such as swipe button or even fingerprint are not important. But the ignition key for the older cars, and there are still many on the market today, is very important. The ignition system. The ignition key will replace a switch that is often used in the electrical system. Its role, of course, is as a breaker and connector for the electrical currents from the battery to the ignition system. With the ignition, the control of ignition system is really in the driver eyes or even you. Third, ignition coil. The third component of the car's ignition system is the ignition coil, also known as the ignition coil. Hard work to be done by an ignition coil. An ignition coil must convert to the 12-volt voltage from the battery or charging system to a voltage list 5K volts to 5K. To increase the voltage, then the much there is no the way except to the use voltage booster transformer working system. In the there is a coil too, which used to increase this limit. Fourth, coil cable or high voltage. The fourth component is the car's ignition system is the coil wire. The coil cable is responsible for delivering the high extra voltage in the coil to the distributor. You can imagine how much voltage, say, to 20 volts, 20,000 volts the coil wire must carry. The amount of this voltage demands high voltage cable to have good enough material and also of course with the smallest resistor power to the make the voltage not lost when supplied to the distributor. Next,
Fifth, platina. The fifth component of the car's ignition system is platinum. Platinum is also often referred to as breaker point or contant breaker. What is the function of platinum? Platinum in the ignition system function as a breaker and connector for the current, namely the primary winding current on the coil to mass ground. Of course, the purpose of breaking this current is to induction in the secondary coil in the coil. If the platinum does not work, it can be caused that the voltage was not possible to reach by the coil. 6. Condenser. The next component of the car ignition system is the condenser, often also known as condenser, capacitor, or capacitor. What as is there a condenser is the ignition system. The main task or function of the condenser is a car ignition system is to prevent spark from jumping in the platinum gaps when the platinum is doing its job, namely when platinum is open and closed to cut off the coil current. There is another function of it, namely to accelerate the disconnection of the coil primary current by breaking the electric current in the primary coil faster. The magnetic field will be formed faster too. The speed at which this magnetic field occurs will also result in higher voltage generated by the ignition coil, and this will improve the ignition system work. 7. Distributor. The distributor of a car, the seven component of the car ignition system. This is a component that work after the high voltage generated by the ignition coil. Then what is the real function? As the name suggests, distributor of course is function is a distributor, namely channeling high voltage current from the ignition coil to the car spark plug, the spark plug wires. But remember, the distributor is not arbitrary, but must be in accordance with the ignition or firing order FVO FO rules, which are based on the number of cylinder in the engine. 8. Cable spark plug. The I component of the car ignition system is the spark plug wire along with the fire sharing rule. VO. The spark plug wire, as stated above, means that the spark plug will bridge the flow of current with high voltage that occurs to the spark plug from the distributor. The spark plug wire should have the same material as the coil wire because it must also transmission a current with high voltage. This at last the same sorry where because it must also transmit a current with high voltage, which is less the same in the coil wire. Even the resistance your have should be the same as to coil wire so that the ignition system can work optimally. Please note that the number of spark plug wire with spark plug nin spark plug. The main and last of the component of the car ignition system are spark plug. The best spark plug are the last place for the amounts of current with high voltage generated by the coil before combustion in the combustion chamber. Spark plug work is to sprinkle spark that will occur between the electrodes. The jump for off spark, then ignition, the fuel and air compressed by the piston. Although the piston compression is perfect if the spark plug flame is small, combustion will still be difficult there. Therefore, it is necessary to ask the best spark plug on the market or the output from the car manufacturer. Uh, so many presentation from us, more or less. We apologize for a large amount. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much.
Thank